Hey everybody, I'm Elysia Buss, horse. We're gonna edit that part. I'm gonna get right on that editing part. It's gonna be amazing. Really good practice for me. 3, 2. Hey everybody, I'm Elysia. I am the host of Horsepower Empowerment Through Connection, and I'm here today with Julie Medeiros. Medeiros. I've been friends with Julie since like 2016, and somehow I still mess up her last name. How funny is that? So I feel really honored and privileged to get to be spending time with my friend Julie today. It has been a hot minute since we have gotten to catch up, but Julie has a very important story to share with the world, especially with what's going on today. So Julie and I met in Prescott College back in 2016, and we went on this epic road trip to the Grand Canyon. I had never been there before, and it's kind of far, and so we had the opportunity to tell lots of stories, both like silly stories and also serious stories. And during that really entertaining and beautiful trip, I had the opportunity to hear Julie's profound story of how she was sex trafficked at a very young age of 11 and had been groomed by her family at the age of 6, which is pretty intense as it's just a conversation. And she's going to school right now for counseling, which I think is a fantastic fit for just who she is as a human being, but as well as her story and what she's able to offer the community in a really authentic, safe space of non-judgment, which I think is so incredibly important for the people that have to go through those horrific experiences. And so she has started this amazing nonprofit, which is called the Frontline Survivors. And so I'm going to open up the floor for Julie to get to tell us more about Frontline Survivors and her personal story that led her to that decision.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to get to share with you guys just about what we're doing. There's definitely a role that every single person has to play in this issue, and so I'm super excited to get to share with you guys.
Thank you so
To
much,
start
Julie.
out, just a little bit about what Frontline Survivors is. My best friend and I are both survivors of sex trafficking, and we have noticed that there's a need. They have a lot of services for people coming out of trafficking, but there's not a lot of services for the before of like when the kids are vulnerable. So what we have done is we started a youth group called Frontline Youth, and we work with at-risk kiddos ages 7 to 17. And we do a lot of education for them around, healthy boundaries, healthy relationships, internet safety, which is huge for this generation.
Yeah.
And we're really focused on that mentoring and building relationships with these kids. And so we meet with them, and we have partnership with an equine therapy ranch that we get to take them out to, and they get to ride the horses, they get to be out there, they get to do equine therapy and have that foundation of horses, because we all know we're all horse people. They're super healing. They're very powerful and intuitive.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the big part of what Frontline Survivors does. The other side of it is we do work with girls who have been sex trafficked, who are coming out of the life, the teenage girls. But we do try to keep those two separate so that we don't, if there are girls who are recruiting and things like that, we don't want our at-risk youth to fall into that population. And
Right.
so
Healthy boundaries.
yeah, healthy boundaries. So we're working on building our nonprofit right now. So currently we get to function under the Phoenix Dream Center, which is the nation's largest sex trafficking organization. They have the most beds in the country. And so, which is super awesome. I love that I get to be a part of them. I currently am doing my counseling internship through them. So I actually get to walk beside and counsel the girls who are coming out of that and the boys. They do have a program for males coming out of that as well.
Good.
So that's a little bit about what I'm doing now. It's been a very, very long process to get to this point, to be able to pour back into the at-risk and the survivors. As many of you people have seen in the news lately, it's pretty horrific what happens. And so a little bit about my story is I was born into my trafficking. I'm what's considered familial trafficking. So that just definition means that I was trafficked by someone within my family, that my pimp was in my family. And so for me, I grew up in a religious home. I was taught that that's why God put me on this earth, was to serve men. And so at the age of 11, from 6 to 11, I was groomed. And then from 11 to 18, I was actually trafficked. And which familial trafficking survivors are considered unseen, the unseen or forgotten, because it's very, very hard to find those kiddos. It's very hard to see it because it's happening behind those closed doors in the home. It's not happening on the street or online. It's all out of the home. And so I was trafficked over in the Dominican Republic. And we have our media has gotten better about portraying trafficking, but we're still lacking in showing what it really is. We think of these scummy men, or these kids being taken overseas and kidnapped and all this stuff, which that does happen, but a lot of it is happening here in the States, American children being trafficked by Americans. And so a lot of the Johns that would come through, or the clients that would come through, would be these prominent men who were in the community, and they weren't these drug dealers or scumbags. They were functioning in the churches, the schools, very, very they had those authority positions. And so I kind of grew up not being able to trust authority or just really trust anybody. And so I started, I want to say I was 16 or 17, I started realizing my family is very, very different. But I had never heard the term sex trafficking at this point. I had just, this is what we do. This is life. This is what I was born for. And so when I started seeing my friends' interactions with their family and stuff like that, I knew something was off. And that is when I was 16, I went on a mission trip to the Dominican Republic. And I was told that if I came back, I had to continue obeying what was being asked of me. And if I wasn't going to obey that, I was going to get left there in the Dominican Republic. And not that that was necessarily what he would have done, but in my mind, 16-year-old, I thought I was going to be left. And so I was just yes, just take me home. And so when I was 18, I finally literally grabbed what I could and I left. And when you're groomed in that mindset of that's what you're supposed to do, it's hard to live a different lifestyle. So it's not you get out and everything's fine and you never do that again or anything like that. And so a lot of it, I started using sex and meeting up with these different guys as a way of survival, because that's what I thought, but also as a way to check out. That's what I label it as, is, I would just be able to check out and just not have a care in the world.
Yeah.
And so at this point, I still had never heard the term. I was connected with a church after I had left, a different church. And I had slowly started telling one of the pastor's wives about, my experience. I would give her little pieces here or there. And one day I came out into their living room and she goes, "Oh my gosh, Julie, I saw something and it sounds just like your story. You have to see it. I recorded it for you." And I was like, okay. So I sit down and I watched this show, and it was this young girl came on and was talking about familial trafficking and called it sex trafficking. That was the first time. And I
And
was,
how old were you when that happened?
I had to be like 20 at this point, 20 years old. And my emotions just went off the charts. I had a
Yeah.
flip out. I was like, why the heck would, I used other words, but why the
Oh,
heck?
sure.
Yeah, I'm like, why would you show me this? Like, I can't believe you. And she's standing there and she's like, I'm so confused. Like, what, like, what happened?
Yeah, I was just like, I'm at a loss. What just happened?
Right.
I
And
thought
so,
I was helping you.
yeah. And so she's like, what's going on? And I was like that. I finally like calmed down. I was like, dude, that's what happened to me. And so it was like, as time came, it was relieving to know, like, I wasn't the only one out
Yeah,
there. Like, I'm not some weirdo. But also it was like overwhelming to be labeled
sure.
like that. And
Yeah,
so I slowly started going through healing, like seeking counseling, doing a couple of different support groups. Um, but my ability to communicate, I could literally only answer questions with like, I don't know. If it was anything deep, it was like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. I used to wear my hair down and only have like one eyeball showing. Like, I just didn't want anybody to look at me. I felt very gross and just very shut down and just fearful.
sure.
And so um, there was a period of time where my trafficker had attempted to kill me through strangling me. And that's what got the police involved.
Wow.
Because up until this point, I hadn't said anything. And so, which led to an investigation and all of that. And so, when I was doing my undergrad, I had never been around horses up until this point. And so, um, my so I was going through this investigation while I was at Grand Canyon University, and one of my friends kept calling my adopted mom. Like, she wasn't my mom at that point. I've never met her, but my friend called her and was like, there's this girl, you need to meet her, you need to meet her, you need to meet her. And my adopted mom, Elaine, was like, I'm busy, I don't have time, like, I'm dealing with all these other girls who are coming out of this too, like, I don't have time. So it was crazy. I ended up meeting her through someone else, like, and it came out, and she's like, oh my gosh, I think someone was calling me about you. And it ended up being me. And she's like, she has these voicemails still from this guy, like, telling her, please meet my friend. And so, yeah, so my adoptive mom, she started walking beside me, just really met me where I was at. A lot of people who are trying to help survivors try to come in and like fix them, like, you need to change this. And my mom came in and she's just like, I don't know what I'm like. I'm just called to love you. That's all I'm called to do. I'm called to walk with you and love you, and you're going to do what you're going to do, but I'm just going to love you anyways. And so, which
Beautiful.
no one had given me that permission, because I was constantly like trying to fix myself so that so they would like me, or like I would be doing what was right. And so it kind of took that pressure away of having to like perform. And so at the time, she was working at the Phoenix Dream Center as well, and they were trying to build a connection with a ranch out here in Phoenix. And so my mom called me and she's like, do you want to go out to this horse ranch with me? And I was like, okay, like, sure, I love animals, why not? Like, and so
That sounds nice.
like, again, I will like literally show up to the ranch, my hair is like in my face, I'm like walking with my head down, like looking at the ground. And the lady at the ranch like met me out there, and she just like introduced herself, was talking about the horses. And there was a horse out there, his name was Mick. And I was just so drawn to him, and I didn't know what it was. So I just went and just stood at his stall, and I just stood there. And like, I just remember like looking at him and just like feeling like, you get it, like, you understand, like, I don't have to tell you anything, but you understand. And so the lady came over and she was like, this is Mick. And the lady just started telling me his story about how he was like severely abused. Like, he had his tongue cut, like he had like sperm marks all over him, like he was left for dead, like just this horrific story. But like, when I looked at him, I'm like, oh my gosh, like you get it, you understand. And so my mom and the lady were like going around like looking at all the animals and stuff like that, and I just stood there with him. And again, like when the lady was like trying to engage me, I just kept saying, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And so after that moment, I wasn't a client at the Dream Center, but the Dream Center allowed me to go out with their girls and do equine therapy. And so each week we would go out there, and it was crazy, like just connecting with those horses, just brushing them, and just like them totally understanding. And the horse Mick, he was very skittish of people, and so he would come and just like stand with me, and like that, just like the fact that he trusted me made me like trust him. And so through like going out there each week and building that connection with Mick, I was then able to build the connection with people, because up until that point I couldn't have, I wasn't able to have like relationship. I wasn't able to open up. And so what they would do is they would come in, I would just be brushing, and they would stand on like the other side and just stand there. And eventually like I just started like talking and sharing. And so what I like to say is like horses were the bridge for me, what connected me back to people. So Mick bridged that gap. And so, which was so powerful. And I got to learn to ride on him. Like he's my baby. Yeah. And so he ended up passing away in, was it 2018? It was so crazy because he was totally fine. And I got to ride him on his last ride, which was heartbreaking. But like, the fact that like I got to be with him out on the trail, like doing what he loves, and when he passed, like it was super amazing. So he brought a lot of healing for me. But when I moved up to Prescott College, because I was doing equine therapy every week like that, I wasn't able to make that drive to go out to the horses.
Yeah.
And so the lady of the ranch, she called me one day and she's like, how are you doing? I was like, I'm really lonely up here. Like, I don't know anybody. And she's like, well, what if I was telling you, like, we're going to bring like your horse up? Like, we're going to bring your horse, which was Chubby. And so Chubby was a horse that I was able to connect with out at the ranch as well. And he was kind of like, he was the loner that like, no one, like none of the people, like none of the clients out there wanted to connect with him, but I just loved him.
He was a sweet horse. I got to meet him when I was out at Prescott.
He's so little. He's like an Arabian, but he's so little and just like, he's so goofy.
He's a good boy.
Yeah. So they're just like, what if I tell you like we're going to bring Chubby up to you? And I was just like, oh my gosh. So I got to have Chubby up at Prescott with me, and he's still with me. He's retired now, living his life.
In Tucson with all the other old people.
Yeah, he's retired horses. So, yeah, he's like at a sanctuary, so he's living his best life. But yeah, and so before equine therapy, I had tried counseling, but it was very, very hard for me to sit and like, while a counselor's like staring at me, I'm just like, this is really weird. Like, yeah, like tell me all the deep things. And I'm just like, I don't know what to say. Like, you don't understand. And so
yeah,
it took the pressure away of having to like talk. And so it was super, super healing for me. And just, when you're out, like, because I'm from Phoenix, which is a big city. And so when we go out to the ranch, it's like a 45-minute drive. And it's like,
so beautiful out there.
Yeah, you don't feel
it's
like
so empty.
Yeah, there's like nothing out there. There's like mountains. And so it was just so freeing, just getting away and getting to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so as I started like having momentum in my healing, I was just like, dude, like this is what I want to do. Like, I want to give back. And so I had to put in like a lot of work to get to the place where I was able to walk along other survivors, because it is, for someone coming out, it could be very triggering. And so I have to make sure that I'm in a constant place of like checking myself, checking my triggers, and making sure that I'm healthy so that I'm able to meet those survivors where they're at. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long journey. I finished my master's degree in December. I cannot wait.
Congratulations, my friend. It has been a long journey.
Yeah, yeah.
Different schools and like everything else that you've gone through. It's truly inspirational
Oh, thank you.
how far you've come.
Yeah.
It's just
So
wow.
yeah, it's been awesome. It's been awesome, and I love working with the kiddos. COVID has really, really affected what we're doing with our kids. Just because we're here in Phoenix, we're we're like a hot spot right now, and so
Which
but
you personally know.
yeah, so I had COVID, but
But you're
from
fine now.
yeah, yes, I'm fine. I got COVID at the end of June. I think it was the end of June. And I was down for like 2 weeks, just not feeling well. It was really the hardest part for me was the quarantine, like having to be away from everyone and just like dealing with that like rejection in yourself. Like it was really hard. But when I finally started showing symptoms and getting sick, I didn't care at that point. I was just like, dude, I'm so sick. I'm just gonna lay in this bed and pray.
Oh,
And so
pray that
yeah,
I don't die.
yeah, and it was, I mean, looking back now, it gave me a lot of insight because my clients who I was seeing for counseling, a lot of them had COVID or they were dealing with quarantine. And so when I was talking, because I did teletherapy through that time. So it gave me a
Yeah.
little bit of insight of like, dude, I know what you're going through. Like, I'm right there with you. And so being able to give just that little extra insight with
Yeah.
them. So yeah, it was,
Fascinating thing to talk about.
yeah. So our kids, we didn't meet with them for a few months. I think it was March, um, April, May, June. Yeah, we didn't meet with them for like 4 months. We didn't see our kiddos.
Wow.
And so, which is really hard because some of our kiddos, they come from rough families where, the parents are there, but they're not engaged, they're not involved. And so, they were really struggling with just not having anybody to connect with. And so this last week, because we have a summer camp we do with them each year, and so we had to cancel our camp.
Mm,
So we ended up doing a 2-day event with them. And so we went to main event and we went rock climbing with them just to get them out and moving, just because the ranch hasn't opened up back again.
yeah.
And then this last Friday, we ended up doing like a big pool party for them just to get out, which was really needed. And when we were talking to the kids, like, what was the best part? And they're just like, being around people, like, which is really sad because a lot of our kids are like struggling right now with having to be quarantined and just not having that interaction. So it was really cool to be able to get to reconnect with them again. So
No, that's really great. It makes me think about how with all of the technological age and how some of the kids get pulled in online and then more people wanting to do things virtually, academically, and with different health services, do you find that there's a struggle there with like wanting to connect with the kids, but them also like they're not necessarily supposed to be on the computer or
do you mean like when we're hanging out with them, like trying to engage on that? Is that what you mean?
oh no, I mean that could definitely be a question too. But no, I was referring more to like when you couldn't see them for 4 months because
Yeah.
of COVID and you doing telehealth with some of your counseling clients. But whether or not those kids fell into that category or if it was more of like the youth mentorship that you do.
Uh, okay, let me see if I understand. So you're asking like the telehealth, like, so my telehealth counseling, that's through the Phoenix Dream Center. That's what I'm doing, like my counseling.
Yeah.
But then the mentor side of it is with the kiddos that we
Yeah.
serve. So with those kids being on their phone, like engaging, yeah. Yeah. So that's what we have. A few kids, they just literally sit at home and that's all they do. And it like they just which makes them even more vulnerable. It breaks my heart because then there's no, like, the parents are out working, and then like we have a couple kiddos that sit on like Fortnite, and that's a live game where you're just talking to people. You don't know who you're talking with, like you don't know. And so we've had to have those conversations of like, I know you're bored and you're looking for connection, but like we need to connect with people, and not like these random these random people, because that's where the traffickers are loving this right now. Like they are thriving in this right now because parents are gone working, and so the kids are home alone. Like who's watching them? Who's monitoring what they're doing online? And so and these kids are longing for that connection. So it is so easy right now just to pull them on in.
Yeah, it's a scary thing, I imagine, for a lot of parents right now. And like, how do you navigate that with parents that they can have realistic conversations with their kids without being stuck in that fear state, right?
Right. And I think, yeah, I think it's a balance of like, you can't just stick in that fear of like controlling, but you can't go all the other way, the other side of it where you're like, I don't care, like do whatever. Like you're going to have to find that balance of like, yes, like there is fear, like have that conversation with your kids, you're monitoring them, but also giving them that little bit of freedom to teach them. Because if you don't give them freedom for them to learn and to find that healthy balance, when they get an ounce of freedom, they're just going to run with it and go. So
Right. You have to give them their autonomy.
yeah. So
Yeah, that's it's such an interesting balance. Like my heart goes out to both kids and parents,
yeah.
and navigating all of that.
Right.
So much. For the people out there who aren't quite aware of the scope of the problem, do you know any of the numbers off the top of your head of how many people are being trafficked right now? Or like the increase of trafficking since?
I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but there's a website called Polaris, and they are a national organization and they keep all the stats of the trafficking and what's kind of happening. They're monitoring that, and so you can go on their page and pull up those stats, but I don't have that off the top of my head. But
and folks, we will put that in the description so you can click on the link afterwards if that's something that you're interested in delving deeper into.
yeah, and that's why in Polaris too, they run the National Trafficking Hotline. And so if you ever need to report something or anything like that, you can contact the Polaris through there. They're phenomenal. They'll like if I'm working with like a trafficking survivor from Washington or California, you can call the hotline and they'll help. They have connections. It's kind of like an underground railroad. They'll help get the survivor to where they need to go to safety, and they have all the ins and outs of how to like work with if they don't have identification and all of that, and getting them tickets and stuff like that. So they're a great organization.
And for some of the people that don't know what the Underground Railroad is that you're referring to, can you briefly dive into that?
Yeah, so basically so when these girls are coming out of trafficking,
Or voice.
huh?
Or voice.
Yeah, when they're coming out, they're very much running. They're running for their life is at risk, and so the problem is getting them to safety without these people knowing, because it's like there's a lot of people involved in trafficking, and a lot of times it's high-end people, so you have to get them out quickly, and a lot of times without anybody knowing where they're going. And so it's kind of like the Underground Railroad with like Harriet Tubman like rescued all those slaves, and so that's literally what Polaris does, is it helps navigate that, getting them out quickly and safely without anybody knowing where they're at. So yeah,
super intense stuff.
Yeah.
What would you say that there would be some red flags that people could be aware of?
There's quite a few, but yeah, some of them, a big red flag you'll notice is if you're in the medical field, or I guess just out in public, a lot of things the trafficker will do is they will speak for the victim. So if you notice that another person is speaking on behalf of someone, that's like a huge red flag. And sometimes you'll see bruises or things like that. A red flag are LGBTQ community, because they get rejected a lot of times from home, and so they'll run away, and then they're on the streets. They just fall into that vulnerable population. Chronic runaways are huge. You'll see social media is probably the biggest red flag that you'll see. They just looking at the kids' apps that they're on, like the POF, Plenty of Fish, Tinder, like any game that has like live chat. The traffickers are all going through there right now. If you see like they have, it's called the blade or the track, and that is basically where a street in most cities, they'll have something called the blade. That's what they refer to it as. And that's the street where a lot of the girls are working off of.
Oh.
Yeah, so you can, I'm sure for your city, you can like Google and see if you can kind of find out where your tracker blade is, but you'll see girls out there on the corner, and you'll see men like standing behind them while the girls are on the corners or things like that. Something I like to tell people is, because a lot of people want to go out and like reach out and try to help the girl who's on the corner. If they see someone, they'll like try to approach the girl, and that is not always the best thing, because you're putting that girl at risk to be abused or beaten or whatever. And so if you do decide that you want to approach one of the girls, and if the second they tell you to back off, you need to back off and leave, because you're going to end up putting them at risk for themselves. But yeah, so that's a few of them. And I have a training or like a PowerPoint. I don't know if you want it or if you want to post.
Yeah, no, that would be great. Thank you.
That kind of goes through some of that. It goes through some of the terminology, because sex trafficking, they have their own language. They have their own terms. And so that's another thing, is if you notice some of the terms being used, like a trick, which is a client, or I can't even think of them off of the top of my head, but like a bottom, or the term bottom bitch, that's like the top girl, and that's the girl who keeps the other girls in line. So you'll hear that term quite a bit. So things like that, like an exit fee, you'll hear gorilla or Romeo pimp. So I can get all of those to you, Elysia, if you want to post those, or
I mean, just attach them in the description for the YouTube video, because today's interview is really about increasing awareness for what's going on out there, and how we can help people, and where, like, what services we can direct them to. Equine assisted learning and equine therapy being one of the services that we can direct survivors of sex trafficking to. One of the things that we haven't really touched on yet is like how we can support the friends and family members of people struggling in those situations.
Yeah, and so the majority, I will say like 90% of the girls coming out of trafficking are in DCS care, or CPS. And so a lot of them don't have family. That's like the big aim that these traffickers go for, is they want the people that no one's going to come looking for.
Right.
Now, I do have some girls that come out and have, and they're still with their family. And so, yeah, so I think the family being involved in counseling, having their own support group, any equine therapy kind of separate, giving that parent that time to grieve on their own is going to be important, because the parent's trying to be like support their kid through that horrific thing.
Right. Or siblings. Siblings,
that
they come back to the family, and how do the siblings help to engage and process with that experience?
Yeah, a lot of, and that's another area that I feel like we're lacking in, is we've gotten better about providing services for our girls, but for the ones who have family, like, it's not really necessarily like presented to them of like, here's support for you too. And I have that with one of my moms right now. She was just calling, and her kiddos had been trafficked by her husband, and she had no idea. And so he went to jail, and now she's left dealing with the girls. And she was talking to me on the phone, and I was just like, how are you doing? And she just broke down and was like crying because no one
had asked her.
no one had asked her, no one had provided
Mind
services for
blowing.
her or anything. And I just told her, I'm like, okay, if you want to get involved, like, you're going to need counseling just as much as these kids. Like, you're going to need services just as much as them. So yeah, I feel like the services might mirror the kiddos services, if the parents are involved, because it's, and then they're dealing with compassion fatigue and burnout.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Those, because it's, I mean, when when my adoptive mom got me, like, I was a wreck. And so she was literally like, I was full blown PTSD, nightmares, flashbacks, self-harm, like not eating. And so she was like having to help with that. And so it can get very, very tiring and frustrating, I'm very sure. So it's because it's a lot to overcome.
No, I imagine. And how do you feel like today within yourself, having gone through all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have a different perspective today. I used to like get really upset and just like constantly question, like, why me? Like, why didn't anybody come save me? Like, no one saved me. I got out myself when I was 18, like, and so I was stuck in this cycle of just constantly, and I couldn't go anywhere if I was continue focused on those questions. And I finally had to just go, you know what, I don't have those answers. Like, maybe one day I will, but if I keep seeking those answers, like, I'm not going to be able to move forward. And so, today I'm not going to say I'm not perfect. Like, this is something that I'm probably going to have to heal from for a long time. And I do have like those days where I have like a nightmare or feeling depressed or anxiety. But I've learned tools, and not that I'm perfect at it. I will never say that I'm perfect.
We're all human. We don't get to have perfection.
So, but I'm not perfect, and I still have my bad days. And like, if I
And you're 31 now.
yeah, and if I think about it, like, I'm thankful for that, because then it allows me to be able to relate and connect with my clients, because sometimes when you forget what it's like. But so it's nice to have those reminders. Not when, I don't think it's nice when I'm going through it, but
I understand. I would hope everybody understands.
right. But it is nice to have that. But yeah, I've definitely have come a long, long way. I love my life. I love what I do. It's very, very hard work. Working with this demographic is not for the faint of heart, but
I can well imagine.
as it stays. But on the good days, I walk away and I'm just like, dude, this is worth it. Like, when you have that kiddo that finally gets it, or is living on their own independently, or making those healthy strides, you're just like, dang, this is worth it. This is why I do it.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, it's super powerful. It's hard, but it's super powerful. So
Great. And do you have a partner right now?
I do not. I'm living the best single life. I have a dog. He's my fur baby.
Oh my gosh, where is he? Is he outside?
Downstairs right
Oh
now.
my
I
gosh.
didn't want him to bother.
I understand. He's so cute though, you guys. Like, oh, I got to visit with him when I was down there. He's so little.
Now, so.
Yeah. So can you tell us some profound stories of like what you've seen with the kiddos? Because you shared that beautiful story of yourself, but the work that you've been doing with the horses.
Yeah. So do you want specifically with the horses, or just outside of, or any?
With the horses would be great. I'll take whatever you've got though. Empowering others is what we're all about here. So like what you got?
Right. Okay. So we can share one kiddo. She comes from, I'm not going to give names for HIPAA.
No, of course not. No. I'd be like, no, come on, you know better.
Yeah, she is an 11-year-old girl. She constantly, like, she covers her whole body in hoodies. She has very, very low self-esteem. Just very, very timid. Like it's very, can't even like order her food when you go out to like a restaurant. Like it's very, very anxious. And so we started taking her out to the ranch, and we ended up doing an overnight out there. And so they got to spend all night and all day with the horses and learning to like, muck stalls, and like, we got to play games with them, grooming and all of that, and like learning to walk the horse. And she just watching this little girl, like so timid and so fearful, like come up to this big animal and just like learn to walk. It was so crazy because you saw it on her face. Like when she started out, like you could tell she's like panicked and like very scared. And literally by the end of that 2-night thing that we did there, the 2-day, just watching her walk around like just this open area. They weren't behind a fence or anything, like just walking so confidently with this horse was so cool. We had another young boy who he's like a total like jock, like city kid, never been out to like anything. Like this kid is in like Nike's like bright lime green, like that's like this is such a goofy horse outfit. But he came out and like he was working with the horse, and he had like tied the horse up, and she had come undone, and she was the biggest horse out there. Her name was Izzy. And so he's out there like working with her, and she came untied. And so she's just like walking away, and he like started like panicking and like yell, like he just went to like sheer like, oh my god, because he he hasn't been around horses. And so we like stopped for a minute, and I was like, okay, like just take a breath. Like so we got to like calm him down and ground him, and then to watch him like, because she was walking free, and at that point he hadn't like been around like a horse just out and about. And so we got to walk him through and coach him through like going by himself up to the horse, like getting the horse, because the halter had totally come off. And so like and it was so cool to watch these little city kids like who have no experience at all like get out there and just thrive. It's super cool. I love it. So
It's beautiful.
yeah.
Just empowering them and giving them more confidence.
Yeah.
And
their outfits are the best, I must say, because like we think of ranchers, but when these little kids come out there, they're like I don't know, just in basketball clothes or like it's just funny.
that does sound funny. How big was the group that you took out there?
So it varied each week, or each time it varied. We've had anywhere from like 3 kids all the way to like 15 kids.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so we currently, in our youth group, we have a total of 19 kids right now. So we're still small, which is good. But that's just with the Frontline youth. Now with our survivor, our actual survivor girls, we have, I want to say 5, because we don't start working with the survivors until they're 18. For Frontline survivors, just because a lot of them come with DCS and there's like a lot of like stipulations.
Sure.
And so when they turn 18, everyone's hands off, and you're like, well, figure it out, like fly away. And the kids like,
I don't know what to do.
Right. And so then like they end up like screwing up. So we really try to like, meet with them, like have meals with them, like, and start building that rapport with them when they hit 18. So it's not like everyone's gone. Like,
yeah.
so.
No, and don't you do something with the state? You were telling me I think there were only three of you in the state, and there are like 300 kids that you work with in Arizona.
Yeah, so my job, so all of what I do, what I shared with you with the youth, all of that is just volunteer right now. Like that's just all on my own time. What I do for my job is I specifically work with kiddos. Like I think my youngest was 12 to 17. And we work with something called Strength Court, which is a new court that's trauma informed, and it's really good. Like the judge comes off the podium and literally sits across the table from the kiddo and like just tries to have a conversation with them and just like engage them and let them know like we care about you. And so I work as a mentor for them. There are only 3 of us in the state who are working with the juveniles. who are coming out of this. And so that, yeah, there's like 300 kiddos. So yeah, and my organization specifically, which is Southwest Behavioral Health, they allow me to keep my kiddos on after 18. But a lot of them, they don't like to officially be in the system at that point. They've had so many people in their lives that they're just like, stop. And so that's when Frontline survivors will come in and take those 18-year-olds and bring them on with us.
Yeah.
Because they connect more with the survivor than with anybody else. So
Sense to me.
yeah. and that's where all this started, was research was showing that the kiddos were having a higher success rate if they had a survivor on their case than if they didn't. So it's a pretty important role. Like, it really takes a team of people to bring these kids out. It's not one person coming in and like, let me save you. It's like,
yeah,
you have a team of 10 to 15 people, like,
wow, that's a
one kiddo.
really big team of people.
Yeah, it takes a lot to get these kids back on track. So,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I can well imagine. I mean, would you say that, I mean, every individual is different, but would you say that there's a general average amount of time that it takes to help people?
Yeah. It's a long time. So I'm gonna say like 5 years, 3 to 5 years, getting them more so towards 5, to really get them back on track. With these kids, with starting so young, it takes them longer. Now, if you're strictly working with the adults usually come in because they come on their own will and they want the help. The minors don't have that option. So you're working with them at the point where, like, they don't want your help. They don't want you involved. They don't want to tell you what's going on. So you're spending all that time with them until they get ready to then start doing the work.
Right.
Whereas
Or just building relationship and creating that safe, non-judgmental container for them to be like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then the adult side of it, when they're coming on their own, so it takes a shorter amount with them because they want to start working. So,
Yeah. Wow. That's
yeah.
a lot.
It's a lot. And I mean, I love my job. I mean, a lot of what I do too is I get to go to court with these kids, and I get to advocate and speak on their behalf. And
That's awesome.
thankfully, like, our state really takes into consideration like the survivor perspective. So a lot of times, like, I'll coordinate with the judge, and the judge will like flat out ask me like, what do you think? What do you want? And the survivor perspective holds a lot of weight when it comes to making decisions with these kiddos, which is,
That's awesome.
yeah,
That's really nice to hear.
Yeah. So Arizona's doing a good job at getting this started. We still have room to grow, but they've done a really good job so far.
No, that's great. Would you say, which states would you say have the greatest prevalence?
For trafficking?
Yeah.
Oh,
I know the I-5 corridor is pretty bad.
yeah, I mean, it's prevalent there. It's happening in every state. Oregon is really big. Arizona, New Mexico, because there's like a trail that goes from like Arizona all the way up to Oregon. So there's like a trail that they take, that it's pretty prevalent. I would say Chicago is really big. Ohio, Florida. Yeah, California is pretty big. But yeah, Washington, D.C. is huge. We've had a lot of people come from there. But I mean, like, the kids, the people, the adults I work with, they'll come in and they'll just be like naming off, like, because they move them. They move them all throughout the states. They don't stay put. So they take them all over.
Craziness.
Las Vegas is huge.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
Yeah. Surprise.
Yeah, DC really isn't either. But yeah, craziness. Do you have anything else that you feel like would be really important for people to be aware of, or?
No, I mean, I think that's it. I mean, I'm more than willing if there's people, because I firmly believe that everyone has a role in fighting this. And so whether it's literally doing what you're doing, like you're taking a part in the movement, or whether it's doing a post, or if it's actually getting out and getting involved,
Yeah.
everyone has a part to play. A lot of people have misconceptions on what it is, and they think it doesn't happen here, which is crazy.
Right. Or what people look like that are the ones that are being trafficked. Right.
Right. And so, I mean, if anybody has any questions, like I'm willing to, through Facebook, if you want to send a message or, comment or whatever, we can get you connected in whatever way or get your questions answered. So.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that offer, Julie. I really appreciate it. Wow, what an incredible human being, ladies and gentlemen, and just such an honor and privilege to get to share the time and space and her message with everyone out there. So again, if you have any questions for Julie, or if you have your own personal story that you would like to share on my show, so that we can continue getting the awareness out with what's going on, please do contact me. We'll have all of that information for links that she's discussed and how to get a hold of both of us in the descriptions. So thank you again, everybody, for watching, and Julie for being on the show. You're amazing.
I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, until next time. Bye.